Kia ora, everyone. My name is Anna Guenther, and I'm the co-founder of PledgeMe. I'm here today with Tim Jones, who helps grow good businesses, and we're going to talk about B Corp because I need to know more information, so I thought you should too. And so I've got a bunch of questions, but if you have more questions, we'll get Tim to share his contact information at the end, so you can get in touch with him as well. But first up, Tim, what's a B Corp?
That's a great question. Kia ora. Thank you for having me. Thanks for chatting. So B Corps are this new form of business that are that have to balance purpose and profit. So traditionally, the only thing business had to focus on was maximizing shareholder return. B Corps, however, must consider the impact of their operations on more than that. They need to consider the impact on their workers, their community, the planet, their customers, and other stakeholders. And to do that, or to become a B Corp, you go through what I call a rigorous but achievable independent verification process, which looks like an initial self-assessment followed by an online audit. And having gone through that process, you will then be independently verified as a B Corporation to be operating at the highest levels of transparency and accountability when it comes to your social and environmental impact. So that's a B Corp. And, I will say, because I always forget, and then someone will want to know, the B stands for benefit. So beyond making a ton of money for a few people, what benefit is your company providing to people on planet?
And you said it was new. How new is it? How long has this been around as a process, as a framework?
Yeah, so B Corp came, I guess, like the creation myth story, as I like to call it, came about in 2005. So the co-founder of B Corp, or the B Corp movement, is a guy called J. Cohen Gilbert, and he used to be one of the co-founders of And One. So if there's any basketball fans tuning in, there's always one person in a room when I mention And One. And One back in the day was second only to Nike globally for basketball shoe sales. Really, really big challenger brand, like trying to take on Nike. And from their inception, their whole thing was, we want to beat Nike. And then in September the 11th, 2001, Jay's sister was trapped in one of the Twin Towers in New York. Luckily, she was one of the survivors. And then about a week or two later, one of his close friends and colleagues at And One passed away. And so he had what I call the existential wet fish to the face moment. It's like when you have a big life event that just kind of slaps you around the chops and just makes you sit up and go, whoa, like, what am I doing? And so on the back of that, he went on a big journey of exploration to think about, well, what does doing good look like with the business, rather than the traditional, let's make a ton of money and then sell the business and then go do some good with it. And so they started, they created some like leadership outreach programs with community groups in Philadelphia, where they were based, to try and help get kids out of the justice system and into something more meaningful. Before Google was doing all their cool stuff, you know, and sort of providing massage therapy and yoga treatments, they were doing that. They offered employees ownership in the company. They started working with their supply chain to make, you know, to get better conditions in their supply chain. Probably still not perfect. Not that I think anyone's perfect yet. And yeah, having done that, the business went from strength to strength. And then fast forward to 2005, Jay's kind of had enough. He wants to exit the business, takes it to Wall Street. And the first thing the bankers do is look at the numbers and go, hey, look, you've got a great brand, but the numbers are terrible because you're giving away all this money to your community and to your employees and, you know, the planet and your suppliers. So we need to rip all that out to sell it. And so they went through that process, and having gone through that process, he got together, these guys have all got great names, with Bart Houlihan, who was his chief operating officer and CFO at And One, and Andrew Cassoy, one of the Wall Street bankers. And they got together and initially thought about, well, why don't the three of us create a new business? And, you know, this time we'll bake in all that goodness from day one. You know, they thought about creating a pizza franchise and some other clothing retail businesses from scratch. And then the guys all like drinking a few whiskeys, allegedly, and my theory is a few glasses of whiskey turned into a couple of bottles of whiskey, and one of them came up with this idea of, well, instead of creating one more business, what if we created a global movement of businesses that aim to be the best for the world, not the best in the world? So that was 2005, 2006. So 2006 was when they went to a bunch of their mates and said, hey, we've created this certification framework. Would you have a go? Would you have a look at it? And those first 10 B Corps certified in 2006. So it's been around quite a while, but it's really coming into its own really in the last probably, I don't know, 12 to 24 months. It just seems to really be sparking.
And when did the first companies in New Zealand certify as B Corps?
Yeah, so Eagle Protect is the first B Corp in New Zealand, and they are so B Corp. They were a B Corp before B Corp was in New Zealand. So So my company is a B Corp, Eagle is a B Corp, all the other companies that are certified are B Corps, but B Lab is the non-profit organization that runs the certification framework and system. So Jay and the guys created B Lab North America in 2006. B Lab Australia, New Zealand didn't come into existence until 2014. So Steve, the CEO of Eagle, he had to ring the US, and they were kind of like, there's some crazy Kiwi guy on the phone who wants to be a B Corp. Can we let him? And they're like, I guess so. So he's certified as a B Corp in 2012, and then I believe that the next B Corp was Etique, who I think are an alumni of yourselves, and I think they were 2014. So there was like a 2-year window of this crazy guy Steve being a B Corp by himself. So
I love it. I love it. He's like, we need to do this. This is the thing. Let's go.
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing. So say someone is listening to this or reading the blog afterwards and they're like, hey, I want to do this thing. What's the process of becoming a B Corp?
Yep. So basically, if you're interested, you can go to, if you Google, and we'll get a link to you. But if you just look for the B Impact Assessment, so letter B Impact Assessment. So it's completely free for you to go and create an account and start measuring the performance of your business against the B Corp framework. So that's really, really easy. If you want to go through and get fully certified, you need to meet the minimum threshold currently of 80 out of 200 points on that self-assessment. And once you're over that threshold of 80 out of 200 points, which a lot of people go, well, that's not even half marks. How hard is this thing? The median score on first attempt is 50 out of 200. Wow. And that's companies that kind of think that they might want to be a B Corp. So you got to imagine there's a whole bunch of companies that would take it and maybe even score 20 who aren't even interested in looking at B Corp at all. So yeah, you need to score 80 out of 200. Once you've answered all the questions and you're over the 80 out of 200, you submit your what's called your self-assessment for independent verification and audit by the B Lab global team. So they have a bunch of auditors all around the world, and they will then get you on a call for about 90 minutes to 2 hours. And out of your 200-ish questions, they will pick possibly anywhere between 30 and 60, depending on this complexity and kind of what you're doing as a business. And it's a mixture of a verbal audit. So some of them, they might say, hey, Anna, so you claim here you do ABC. Can you explain to me an example of how you've done that recently and what was the outcome? And so you'll go, yeah, we did this and this is what happened. And they'll go, okay, cool, great, I'm happy to verify that. And then for other questions, they will go, similar question, but then I say, great, what I now need to see though is a spreadsheet outlining the list of your suppliers who you claim are from underrepresented communities, and I need to see a breakdown of how much you spend with each one and their geographic location. Great. So I now go to Xero and I go and try and find all the information, and I will upload that behind the scenes. And so once you've gone through that audit process, so long as you're still over the 80 out of 200 threshold, you're then invited to pay your certification fee, and away you go, you're a B Corp.
And how much is that fee? What does it cost? So
the fees are all on a sliding scale. So the entry level for a business under $2 million, in year one, you're looking at about $4,000, which includes your annual fee, a verification fee, and a submission fee. And then you recertify every 3 years, but you pay your annual certification fee every year. But it goes up in pretty sort of small jumps. So it goes from 0 to 2 million, then you're 2 to 3 million, 3 to 5 million, 5 to 7.5, 7.5 to 9 million. So it's a sliding scale based on your revenue. So again, we can provide a link to that, but it's pretty reasonable compared to a lot of other certification frameworks. And I think the value that most companies will get out of it will easily cover the investment. And for me, I always say, if you don't recoup the costs through either employee engagement or talent attraction, through some operational savings by just looking at your business in a different lens, or from getting new customers, from telling the story about how great you are, and obviously potentially getting an investor on board, because investors are increasingly wanting to know what good you're doing. It's like spread it across the accounting codes for all of those parts of your business, and it soon becomes a pretty cheap exercise.
No, I guess that was my next question. Is like, why would you do it? Like, what's the impact that it can have? And so you've just named a few different areas that it does impact your business. Like, is there one that you see being the most important, or something that
I mean, those are the big four that we always talk about? Talent retention and attraction, customer attraction and retention, supply chain pressure, and investment. Those are the four big areas that most companies are increasingly coming under scrutiny. And I think really it's then reflective more of what industry you're in. So if you're in health and beauty, food and beverage, and there's a lot of, increasingly companies are either being founded from day one, like in Atik, we are absolutely socially and environmentally responsible from day one. Great, we'll prove it. Well, we can. We're a B Corp, and if you look at the box of an Atik product, it's got like 20 different independent certifications to prove its social and environmental cred. So increasingly, the savvy consumer in those sectors are going, great. So you claim your product's all natural, all healthy, blah blah blah, but is it? I want to know that you can actually prove that independently. So yeah, I think depending on what sector you're in, but it's creeping into every sector. We've got professional services. I've literally just before this call was working with a company that supplies product into the construction sector, through to some cool brands like your Genoras. Yeah, it's so for me, I always say, look, well, I guess the fifth reason is like it's a good thing to do. It's kind of like the right thing to do is to look at your business and see how you're performing, and are you doing as much good as you can socially and environmentally, and in general being a good corporate citizen. Like that's a pretty good reason for help you get to sleep at night beyond anything else. But yeah, there's definite stats. I'm yet to see any evidence that the B Corp is detrimental to a business. Let's say that.
Oh, you're talking me into doing it again, Tim. I told you last time we started and we got through, and then there was like all these audits, and I was like, I don't have time, but we should do it again. We should do it again. So when should someone do it though? Like, does it work for startups, or should you wait until you're at like 2 million rev, and that's when you sort of pay for the costs and go through the process? When's good? So
we would typically advise as early as practically possible that you can do it. And I know what it's like in the startup arena. Sometimes you don't want it to be a distraction from core business. So if you're really struggling to get traction, or you're genuinely startup, I wouldn't suggest that you go through like an intense project, because it can be a relatively intense project. However, if you're kind of like, if you've got an idea in mind and you're just about to start your startup, I would totally go and have a look at the assessment and just think about, okay, so if we did end up employing someone, what would we might want to be thinking about today around holiday entitlement or training and stuff like that. So almost like pre-launch, using it as a bit of a framework to go, okay, what are some things that we might want to just consider, so that when we do get big and we're scaling, we've got tons of investment through PledgeMe, we're not having to reinvent the business. Because sometimes, the really, typically it's worse for bigger, really established businesses who, we've just been doing it this way for 100 years. Great. Okay, you need to stop doing it that way. And that's going to take time and effort and resource. So yeah, kind of like the earliest that you can without it being a distraction. But it is really applicable for businesses of any size. And as I always say, it's more about mindset and intent rather than size of business. So, I'm a B Corp, and historically I've had no employees. There's a bunch of other sole trader B Corps, all the way through up to some massive B Corps like Kathmandu, who are a listed company. So
what was the hardest bit for you when you were going through your B Corp certification? Was there like a question or a set of questions that you're just like, oh,
it was just finding the time. I was a startup business. So I started my business 2015, mid 2016. I was like, oh, I should probably do that B Corp thing, because I keep telling everyone else that they should be a B Corp. And you get to the end of the week, we had my daughter was more 2-ish at the time, young family. My wife had a startup business. You get to Friday, just through the hustle and grind of trying to keep the business going. And then you look at this B Corp thing and you go, yeah, or I could just go and have a beer. I'm going to have a beer. Which is the thing where you got to.
Yeah, no, it was funny, because I actually literally remember being on the audit call in a friend's flat in Australia as we were launching in Australia, doing a rebrand. Like, everyone else was having beers outside. I was in her room on the audit call, and I was just like, I just want to be out there drinking with everyone else. Like, this is, yeah. So, but yeah, you make the time if it's important, right? And if you, so
well, but even still, it is just one of those things, because most people who we help are either the founder or their chief marketing officer or their ops, chief ops officer, or they are maybe the finance person in the team. Sustainability and kind of doing good is not their core role. And so, if it's like, if you got me to complete some survey on accounting, I just wouldn't want to do it, because I don't understand it, and it's not my core role. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges which is why we exist in many ways, is to help people just get through. We're going to lock you down in a room and make you answer the questions, basically.
Do it. And I think the thing for us is just like, oh, this is just the way we work. Like, we care about this, you know, we care about equality and women and like everything and local. And so like lots of the questions are like, oh, just obviously we're doing this. But I think that point of having to prove it was where I was just like, oh, I'm too tired to go out and like gather this information. But
if you don't believe me,
so tell me more about your job though. So you mentioned you're a sole trader, you help people become B Corp. Like how does that work normally?
Well, so actually we are a limited company, but it's historically just been me working the business. We've got a small team now, but basically, I mean, literally we are B Corp coaches. So we just help people get through that assessment because, like I say, people are either time poor, they don't understand the questions that are being asked of them, and also they kind of don't want to do it in isolation because you just don't know whether you're answering the questions right, and you know how do I do this thing. So yeah, we literally are just like a coach, and typically, like I say, we either work with someone just over one day. That's quite popular. People just lock us in the room, and by the end of the day, we've got through the assessment and we know all the homework we need to go and get done, and we're away. Or we do it through Zoom in 60-minute blocks until we're through. And then we've got a bunch of, so we call it the magic folder. We've got a shared Google Drive, which has got over 300 different examples, templates, documents, resources. So instead of you having to go and create a ethical marketing policy, well, we have a generic, ethical marketing policy that would get you the points for B Corp, that if you want it, great, we'll go use it. But obviously make sure you inform the team that you now have one. But yeah, there's no point you reinventing a policy that, we've got written. So yeah, we're really about trying to compress the time, coach you through. So as we're going through the assessment, typically people say, oh no, we're just doing this. And I'll sort of say, well, okay, look, that's worth maybe a quarter of a point out of 1 full point. For you to get the full points, all you need to be doing is actually this. Do you think you could commit to doing that? And you'll go, yeah, actually, we kind of have been talking about doing that already. Okay, just do that from tomorrow and you can get those points. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
I love it. So why do you think, because this conversation came out of you getting in touch with me, why do you think that companies that crowdfund should think about becoming B Corps? Like what's the benefit for them?
Yeah. So I mean, more broadly, we're definitely seeing just interest from the investment community as well as consumers around, like I say, proving the good that you're doing. So if you look more broadly at the investment sector in general, so globally, ESG-backed assets, so environmentally social governance-based investments are on track to exceed 53 trillion by 2025, which is about 30% of the total investment market. So more broadly, the investment sector is looking at performance socially and environmentally. So if maybe your Pledge Me campaign is a step towards getting further investment, like you're clearly a growing business that's scaling. So if this is maybe, hey, look, let's do some crowdfunding, then maybe let's look, I mean, like I say, let's look at a teak as a really great example that literally started in Brianne's garage or working from home, did the crowdfunding, and then more recently has got a ton of investment. I was one of the shareholders who invested through Pledge Me, and I think it was about maybe 2.5 or 3 years ago, we all got bought out by an investor.
Were you in the first round or the second round?
I think it was the first round. I'm pretty sure it was early on in the piece.
Was it like a shockingly large amount of money you got back, or like just a? Oh,
compared to the investment that I made,
yeah.
I mean, I only put like $500 in, and I think I got 3.5 grand out. And you kind of go, well, that's a nice bonus that I didn't think I was going to see.
You were in the second round,
right?
Second round, people got 25K out for their $500.
Right? Yeah, no, so it wasn't that round. Damn it.
Next time.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you look at that as an example of a company that has really lent on its B Corp credentials and other credentials to say, look, we're genuinely, we're asking for money from you to support us being an ethical business. Well, are you? Because there's a lot of less scrupulous business owners out there than Brianne. Obviously she's no longer CEO anymore. So yes, it's sustainable investment. And then, like I say, even if you look just locally at the banks, so ANZ, BNZ, and Kiwi Bank have all got green business loans in the market. So if you're looking to just get hold of money, people seemingly want to know what you're doing. And then I think, like I say, talking to the consumers, I guess as a consumer investor supporter, increasingly the data is year on year consumers want to support the brands that can prove they're having some social and environmental impact. So yeah, totally.
So I know you're probably not allowed to do this, but can you name like a favorite company that's a B Corp and like why you love what they do?
I mean, I do lean on Etique quite a lot, because for me, I just felt Brienne created a company that, one of the benchmarks for me is a company genuinely doing good. Is like, can you throw rocks at that company? You know, yeah, they're a B Corp, but with Etique, there was never a but. It was just like, they're just doing everything really, really well. I think Little Yellow Bird would be another example of a Kiwi-based company, Wellington-based company. Orba Shoes in Wellington. Again, you just look at how they're approaching. You know, we're trying to redesign a shoe from the ground up to make the whole thing biodegradable. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, there's a few. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have run out of time, because I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but I think this was really great because it talked us through what a B Corp is, how you become one, what it costs, why you would do it, like all the questions that people would normally have. So we will share this out to our crowd and hopefully get a few more B Corps through, including ourselves. Thanks so much for your time.
Cheers, Anna.